Hello, I hope you did your Unit 5 test well. Today we will begin Unit 6 of the course. And what is the major topic we are going to cover in Unit 6? The major topic is radical expressions. Radical expressions. What are radical expressions? Well, square root of x. I hope you know how to read this. Square root of x is a radical expression. Cube root of x. Now, how do we write the cube root? We write a small 3 inside that bent part. We don't write the 2 for square root there. So that sign is square root. When you write a number there, you specify the type of radical. Cube root of x is a radical expression. What does it mean? If a squared equal to b, then square root of b equal to a. Right? Well, what that means is, if 10 squared equal to 100, that means square root of 100 equal to 10. Well, I'm sure you know these ideas. If a cube equal to b, then cube root of b equal to a. Right? Okay, in that case, can you tell me what is the cube root of 8? Can you give me the cube root of 8? 8 can be obtained by raising 2 to the power of 3. So watch this. We have 2 to the power of 3 equal to 8. That means cube root of 8 equal to 2. In the same way, watch another one. Can you tell me what is 5 to the power of 3 equal to? 5 to the power of 3 is 125. Therefore, cube root of 125 is 5. Okay, so the idea of square root, cube root must be familiar to you. In the same way, if a to the power of 4 equal to b, then the fourth root of b equal to a. Alright? Look at this now. 2 squared equal to 4. Therefore, what is the square root of 4? Square root of 4 equal to 2. Now, there is something that is misleading here. Now, look at this. Negative 2 all squared. If you square negative 2, you get the same result 4. Therefore, square root of 4 can also be negative 2. Well, what is misleading there? Every positive number has a positive square root and a negative square root. The positive square root is called the principal square root. And in our study of radical expressions, we will only deal with the principal square root, which is the positive value. Since we are looking for the principal square root, its value is always positive. That means the square root of a number, as far as we are concerned, will be always positive because we will be looking for the principal square root. Okay? More precisely, we can write square root of a squared is absolute value of a. In other words, although square root of a squared can have a positive value and a negative value, we are interested only in the positive value. So we call it absolute value of a. You know that absolute value of a number is always positive. In other words, square root of negative 2 all squared is absolute value of negative 2, which is 2. Now, this also tells you that if you take the square root of a square, what is the result? Square root of a square, the square will disappear. Square root of a squared equal to a. Square root of 2 squared equal to 2, and so on. Alright, let's see what this is. What is square root of 2 all squared? Can you tell me what that value is? When a square root quantity is squared, the square root sign will disappear. Well, what is the value of square root 2 times square root 2? Square root 2 times square root 2 is 2. In other words, square root 2 all squared is 2. Square root x all squared is x. Now tell me, is square root of x squared and square root x all squared, are they both the same? What do you think? What is square root of x squared? I told you, you take the square root of a square, they will cancel each other. The result will be x. Square root of x squared equal to x. Square root x all squared also equal to x. That means these two quantities are exactly the same. Square root of x squared is the same as square root x all squared. Okay, so what is the value of square root 2 all squared? That will be 2, is that right? Yes. So square root 2 all squared is square root 2 times square root 2, which is 2. Square root x all squared is square root of x times square root of x equal to x. How about this? Negative square root x all squared. Well, you know that you raise a negative number to an even power, the result will become positive. So, negative square root x all to the power of 2 is negative square root x multiplied by negative square root x. The negative multiplied by a negative becomes positive. So, this will be a positive x. How about this? When you take a square root quantity and square it, what will happen? The square root sign will disappear. So square root of x minus 2y all to the power of 2 is square root of x minus 2y multiplied by square root of x minus 2y. And what is that equal to? X minus 2y. So any quantity under square root, if you square it, the square root sign will go. In other words, I can also say this. If I take cube root of a quantity, say x minus 1, and if I raise it to the power 3, what will that be? You see, you take the cube root of a quantity and raise it to the power 3, the cube root will disappear. This will be x minus 1. That's right. That will be x minus 1. In the same way, if you take fourth root of a quantity and raise it to the power 4, that will be x plus 1. I hope you understand the concept. If you take the square root of a quantity and raise it to the power 2, it will give you that quantity x minus 2y. You take cube root of a quantity and raise it to the power 3, you get that quantity x minus 1. You take the fourth root of a quantity like x plus 1 and raise it to the power 4, you get that quantity x plus 1. Alright, let's move on. What is the value of square root of 2 squared? Now, you remember I told you square root of 2 squared is the same as square root 2 all squared. And that will be 2. Is that right? Square root of 2 squared is the same as square root 2 all to the power of 2. And that is equal to 2. Alright, let's look at another one. What is this? Square root of x squared. Square root of x squared. Take the square root of a square. The square root and the square will cancel each other. You get x. Cube root of x cube equal to x. Fourth root of x to the power of 4 equal to x. Alright, so this result is very important. Square root of x squared is the same as square root x raised to the power of 2. Okay, let's look at another important principle. Squaring a number does not give a negative answer. You know that. If you square a negative number, the answer will be always positive. What does that mean in terms of the study of radical? That means the square root of a negative number does not exist. You see, you cannot produce a negative number by squaring a number. And therefore, square root of a negative number does not exist. Now, watch this. If I square negative 5, I get positive 25. If I square a positive 5, also I get positive 25. Therefore, I can say square root of 25 is defined, and I will write it as 5. Why? Because we are only interested in the positive value of the square root. So square root of 25 is defined. Whereas, is this defined? Square root of negative 25. Now, there is no meaning for this. Square root of a negative number is not defined. Why? Because you cannot produce a negative number by raising anything to power 2. When you raise any number, whether positive or negative, to power 2, it will always be positive. So square root can only be taken for a positive number. You cannot take the square root of a negative number. But this is not true for cube root. Alright, watch this. You know that negative 5 to the power of 3. Anybody tell me what is the value of this? What is the value of negative 5 raised to the power of 3? Negative 5 is multiplied by itself 3 times. That will be negative 125. That means, what is cube root of negative 125? You see, negative 5 to the power of 3 is negative 125. Therefore, what is the cube root of this negative 125? Is negative 5. You see, cube root of a negative number is defined. Cube root of a negative number does exist, but square root of a negative number does not exist. I hope that point is clear. Okay, let's move on. Square root of a negative number does not exist. Square root of negative 4 is undefined. It has no value. Whereas negative 2 to the power of 3 is negative 8. Therefore, cube root of negative 8 is negative 2. Cube root of a negative number is defined. Alright, so cube root of a negative number is real and it exists. But square root of a negative number is not real and it does not exist. In general, odd roots of a negative number are real. In other words, cube root of a negative number is real, fifth root of a negative number is real, and so on. While even roots are not real. Square root of a negative number is not real. Fourth root of a negative number is not real, and so on. Now, do not confuse between, I want you to watch this carefully, negative square root of 4. Now, is this real? Yes, because the number here is square root of 4. Square root of 4 is real. Negative square root 4 is negative 2. Whereas square root of negative 4 is not real. So do not confuse between negative square root 4, which is real, and square root negative 4, which is not real. Alright, negative square root 4 is negative 2, while square root of negative 4 is undefined. Also, notice that negative cube root of negative 8. Watch this very carefully. Negative cube root of negative 8. Now, we already looked at this before. What is cube root of negative 8? Cube root of negative 8 is negative 2. Therefore, negative cube root of negative 8 is negative negative 2. Double negative is positive 2. Alright, let's find the value of minus square root of 64. Well, is it real or unreal? This is real. Square root of 64 is real. What is square root of 64? Well, negative square root 64 is negative 8. Square root 64 is 8. Why? Because 64 is 8 to the power of 2. Square root 64 is 8. Negative square root 64 is negative 8. How about the next one? Find the value of cube root of 125. We talked about this. Do you remember? What is cube root of 125? In other words, what number raised to the power of 3 gives you 125? That is 5, isn't it? 5 to the power of 3 is 125. Therefore, cube root of 125 is cube root of 5 cube, which is 5. Now remember, cube root of x cube is x. Cube root of p cube is p. Cube root of 5 cube is 5. Okay, learn these basic things as we go on. Find the value of cube root of 343. Can you think of a number which, when raised to the power of 3, gets you 343? Now, you see, if you are familiar with your numbers, you know that 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. How about 6 times 6 times 6? Can you do that in your mind? 6 times 6 is 36. What is 36 times 6? 36 times 6. Isn't it 216? Check it out. What is 7 times 7 times 7? 7 times 7 times 7. 7 to the power of 3. 7 times 7 is 49. 49 times 7. 49 times 7. Isn't it 343? Yes. 343 is 7 to the power of 3. So cube root of 343 is cube root of 7 to the power of 3. Therefore, it is 7. Now, it is very good to familiarize with these numbers. Find the value of 6th root of 64. Okay, let me see if anybody can get that. Can you write 64 as a number raised to the power of 6? Well, the only candidate that is reasonable there is 2. What is 2 raised to the power of 6? Watch this. 2 times 2 is 6. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 times 2 is 32. 32 times 2 is 64. I multiplied 2 by itself 6 times. So 64 is 2 raised to the power of 6. That's right. So 6th root of 64 is 6th root of 2 to the power of 6. And that is equal to 2. Another one. Evaluate or find the value of negative square root 121. Alright, leave the negative for the time being. Tell me, what is square root of 121? In other words, what number raised to the power of 2 will give you 121? You must actually know these numbers. Let's go through the squares of some number. 2 squared is 4. 3 squared is 9. 4 squared is 16. 5 squared is 25. 6 squared is 36. 7 squared is 49. 8 squared is 64. 9 squared is 81. 10 squared is 100. 11 squared is 121. 12 squared is 144. 13 squared is 169. What is 14 squared? 196. What is 15 squared? 225. What is 16 squared? 256. Nice to know these numbers. Tell me, what is 20 squared? 20 times 20 is 400. What is 25 times 25? 625. What is 30 times 30? Is 900. I'm going to stop here. Otherwise, I will not get on with my lesson. Okay. Negative square root 121 is negative square root of 11 squared. That will be negative 11. Now, very important results. Go through them and learn them. But you need to work them out in your own mind. Get the feel of numbers. Then you begin to enjoy this. Alright, find the value of square root of 196. Well, I gave you the squares of some numbers now. What number raised to the power of 2 is 196? I actually went through that a little while ago. 196 is 14 to the power of 2. So square root 196 is square root of 14 to the power of 2. What is square root of 14 to the power of 2? Is 14. Alright, tell me now what this is. What is the square of, alright, what is the value of this? Square root 14 raised to the power of 2. What happens when you raise a square root to the power of 2? Well, taking the square root and raising to the power 2 are opposite operations. They will cancel each other. So square root 14 raised to the power of 2 is 14. Is that right? Yes. Okay, another one. Find the square of negative square root 99 raised to the power of 2. If you notice here, two things will happen here. What are they? When you square a negative number, you can see the number is inside the parenthesis, means everything inside the parenthesis is squared. So squaring a negative number will make it positive. What is the second thing that will happen? Squaring a square root will cancel that operation. Why? Because taking the square root and squaring are reverse processes. One operation will undo the other. That means the answer here will be negative times negative will be positive, and square root 99 times square root 99 is 99. Okay, let's do another one. Find the square of square root 7 over 5 all squared. Well, you can tell me the answer right away. When you square, it is the same as removing the square root. So square root of 7 over 5 raised to the power of 2 is the same as 7 over 5. I hope that concept is clear. You see, one more time, let me just emphasize that. If you take the square root of a quantity and then square it, each of those operations will cancel each other. In the same way, if you take the cube root of a quantity and raise it to the power 3, those operations will cancel. That will be also x. If you take fourth root of a quantity and raise it to the power 4, that again will be that quantity. Okay? Let's move on. Let's now look at an important property. This is something that we will use as we go on. Square root of a over b is the same as square root of a divided by square root of b. You see, square root of a fraction, you can actually split it as square root of the numerator divided by square root of the denominator. Conversely, we can say square root of a divided by square root of b is the same as square root of a over b. Now, these two properties are very important. We will use them as we go on. Alright, find the value of square root of 25 divided by 49. Now, which of these properties will you use here? We can actually use this property. Square root of a over b is square root a over square root b. Square root of 25 over 49 can be written as square root 25 divided by square root 49. Alright, what is square root 25? That is 5. What is square root 49? Isn't it 7? 7 squared is 49. Square root 49 is 7. So, square root 25 is square root of 5 squared. Square root 49 is square root of 7 squared, and that will be 5 over 7. Okay, another one. Find the value of cube root of negative 1 over 8. Well, there are a couple of ways you can do that. Let me first show you the one way I have done here. I can write negative 1 over 8 as negative 1/2 to the power of 3. Am I right? Yes, because negative 1 over 2 to the power of 3 will be negative 1 over 2 times negative 1 over 2 times negative 1 over 2. Right? We are multiplying negative 1/2 3 times, and the negative multiplying 3 times will be negative. The numerators are 1 times 1 times 1, that is 1. The denominators are 2 times 2 times 2, negative 8. So, negative 1/2 raised to the power of 3 is negative 1 over 8. So, we wrote negative 1 over 8 as negative 1/2 to the power of 3. Alright, what is now cube root of? Cube root of a quantity raised to the power of 3 will be that quantity that is negative 1/2. There you go. You can also use this property. How? Do you want me to show that to you? Cube root of negative 1 over 8 can be written as, you see, when this number is negative, either the numerator is negative or the denominator is negative. Both cannot be negative. So let's give this negative sign to the numerator. So I can write it as cube root of negative 1 divided by cube root of 8. Did you understand that? This negative, I gave it to this 1, the numerator. So cube root of negative 1 over 8, use this property, will be cube root of the numerator divided by cube root of the denominator. Now tell me, what is cube root of negative 1? Cube root of negative 1 is negative 1, because negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. And what is cube root of 8? Cube root of 8 is a 2. So this will be negative 1 over 2. So this is equal to negative 1 over 2. That is negative 1/2. So you can do it in either way. As long as you understand it, that'll be fine. Okay, let's move on and continue. Let me see if anybody will give me the answer for this. Find the value of square root of negative 1 over 25. What do you think? I want you to give me the answer. Square root of a negative number is undefined. Is that right? You see, that negative sign is inside the square root. That makes it undefined. Square root of a negative number is not real. Therefore, there is no answer for that. Let's do another one. Cube root of negative 343. I'm sure you remember this number 343. Can you write this as a number raised to the power of 3? Yes. 343 is 7 raised to the power of 3. Now, negative 343 is negative 7 raised to the power of 3. Look at this. So this is the same as cube root of negative 7 raised to the power of 3. Negative 7 times negative 7 times negative 7 is negative 343. So what is the cube root of negative 343? It is negative 7. Alright, let's now find the value of another radical expression. Fifth root of negative 1. Fifth root of negative 1. What is it? You see, earlier I showed you cube root of negative 1 is negative 1. Fifth root of negative 1 is also negative 1. Seventh root of negative 1 is negative 1. You see, I can write negative 1 as negative 1 raised to any odd power, because negative 1 raised to the power of 3 is negative 1. Negative 1 raised to the power of 5 is negative 1. Negative 1 raised to the power of 7 is negative 1, and so on. So, fifth root of negative 1 is the same as fifth root of negative 1 to the power of 5, which is negative 1. Okay, let's move on. Find the value of cube root of 8 over 27. If you know your numbers, you would immediately tell me, yes, I can find the cube root of 8. I can find the cube root of 27. Can you? And therefore, we will use the property we discussed earlier and write it like this. Cube root of 8 over 27 is cube root of 8 divided by cube root of 27. Alright, tell me, what is cube root of 8? 8 is what number raised to the power of 3? 8 is 2 cubed. So that will be cube root of 2 cube divided by cube root of 3 cube. 27 is 3 times 3 times 3. And cube root of 2 cube is 2. Cube root of 3 cube is 3. So the answer is 2/3. Another one. Find the value of cube root of negative 125. I'm sure you can tell me that. Negative 125 is what number raised to the power of 3? Very well. Negative 125 is negative 5 raised to the power of 3. Is that right? Because negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25. Positive 25 times negative 5 is negative 125. So, negative 125 is negative 5 raised to the power of 3. And therefore, cube root of negative 5 raised to the power of 3 is negative 5. All these basic principles are very important for you to understand and make it your own. Let's do another one. Find the value of negative cube root of negative 125. Well, to do this, first of all, forget about this negative. Tell me, what is the value of this? We just did this one. Cube root of negative 125 is negative 5. And therefore, now looking at this negative, it will be negative 5. Is that right? That will be negative cube root of negative 5 to the power of 3, which is negative of negative 5, which is positive 5. So that skill in numbers is very important. Another one. Find the value of square root of 6 squared plus 8 squared. You see, once you have a quantity inside a square root that is a sum, you need to first of all evaluate that sum. So what is the value of this? First of all, you square 6. 6 squared is 36. 8 squared is 64. And then add them together. What is 36 plus 64? There you are. So this will be square root of 36 plus 64. And what is 36 plus 64? It's 100. That is square root of 100. What is square root of 100? What number raised to the power of 2 gives you 100? It's 10. So square root of 100 is 10. Another one. Find the value of, again, negative 3 all squared plus 4 squared. Well, negative 3, when you square it, it will become positive 9. So this will be negative 3 squared is positive 9 plus 4 squared is 16. And what is 9 plus 16? Is 25. Square root 25. What is square root 25? Square root 25 is 5. Okay, I'm sure you like these problems. Once you can do them, you are getting more and more familiarized with radical numbers and radical expressions. Okay, let's now talk about a theorem that may be useful in using radical expressions. Pythagoras theorem. Have you ever heard of Pythagoras theorem? What does Pythagoras theorem deal with? Pythagoras theorem is a theorem about a right triangle. What is a right triangle? A right triangle. Let me show you a right triangle. A right triangle means one angle is 90 degrees. Look at that. This is a right triangle. In a right triangle, one angle is 90 degrees. You see, an angle whose value is 90 degrees is called a right angle. A right angle. So when one of the angles of a triangle is a right angle, it is called a right angled triangle, or simply as a right triangle. Now, what are the characteristics of a right triangle? You see, these two sides that will make that right angle are called the legs of the right triangle. And the side opposite to the right angle is called the hypotenuse of the right triangle. And what does the Pythagoras theorem say? It says the sum of the squares of the legs. Suppose I name these legs. Alright? I'm going to say the bottom leg is A and the other leg is B. The hypotenuse is C. What does the Pythagoras theorem tell you? The sum of the squares of the legs. In other words, square this leg, square the other leg, and add them together. That will be the sum of the squares of the legs. A squared plus B squared is the sum of the squares of the legs. And what is that equal to? It says equal to the square of the hypotenuse, the square of C. So A squared plus B squared equal to C squared, and that is the Pythagoras theorem. You square one leg, square the other leg, add them together, it gives you the square of the hypotenuse. That is the Pythagoras theorem. Now, it will be nice to learn it. It's a very important and very widely used theorem. Alright, here I have the right triangle. A is a leg, B is the second leg. This is the right triangle, so the side opposite to that is C, the hypotenuse. In the right triangle here, A and B are the legs, and the side opposite to the right angle, C, is the hypotenuse. That means the theorem says if you add the sum of the squares, A squared plus B squared should be equal to C squared. That is Pythagoras theorem. Alright, let's use the Pythagoras theorem to do a small problem. In the right triangle, A equal to 24, I gave you the value of A. B equal to 10 centimeter, I gave you the value of B. Find the value of C. Now, how will you go about doing that? First of all, use the Pythagoras theorem and write down that equation. What is the equation? A squared plus B squared equal to C squared. There you are. And what all now you do is replace your A by 24, replace your B by 10, and then find the value of C. So A is 24, 24 squared plus 10 squared equal to C squared. Can you do this on a piece of paper? 24 times 24. What is that equal to? Any idea? Yes, it's 576. And 10 squared is 100. So 576 plus 100 equal to C squared. Or we say C squared equal to 676. Alright? If C squared equal to 676, what is the value of C? You see, from C squared you can get C if you take the square root. So we take the square root of both sides. That means square root of C squared equal to square root of 676. You understand that? C squared equal to 676. We take the square root of the left side and the square root of the right side. Square root of C squared equal to square root of 676. Now what is square root of C squared? Square root of C squared is C. So that gives me C equal to square root of 676 centimeter. Well, since square root of 676 is not a whole number, we will leave it like that. Now, from now on, if you are given something like this, if A squared equal to 100, then A can be written as square root of 100. Is that right? Yes. If x squared equal to 6, then x will be equal to square root of 6. If p squared equal to 4, then p will be equal to square root of 4, and so on. That will be an easy way to remember and do these problems. Okay, let's do one more problem. A guy wire attached to an electric pole is 25 meters long. If the guy wire is fastened to a hook on the ground 15 meters from the pole, what is the height of the pole? Now, do you know what a guy wire is? What is a guy wire? Now, if you look at the electric pole outside your house, doesn't it have something like this? This is the electric pole, and this is the guy wire, the wire that is attached to a hook on the ground so as to keep the pole straight. You see that? Now, what do we have in here? A guy wire attached to an electric pole is 25 meter long. The length of this rope is 25 meter. And the hook to which it is attached is 15 meter from the pole. That means if I measure the distance from the pole to the hook, that is 15 meter long. What are we supposed to find? We need to find the height of the pole. But we need to draw a diagram here. Let's draw a diagram. This is the electric pole. Can you actually see that? I think part of it is outside the camera. But this is the pole, and the guy wire is going to come like this. So let's say, let H be the height of the pole, and we need to find the height of the pole. Alright? Now, that means H is one leg of a right triangle. Now, this is the hook. That means the guy wire will come from the top of the pole to here. Is that right? Yes. Now, this distance is 15 meter. The hook where the guy wire is fastened is 15 meter from the foot of the pole. Now, the other leg, this is one leg that is 15 meter. The other leg is H. That means the third side of the right triangle is the hypotenuse, and that is the length of the rope. This is the guy wire, and its length is 25 meter. So we have now a right triangle. One leg is 15 meter, the other leg is H, the hypotenuse is 25 meter. Alright, can we use the Pythagoras theorem here? What does the Pythagoras theorem say? If you square one leg and square the other leg, add them together, the result will be equal to the square of the hypotenuse. So, look at the way I have done it. I have squared one leg, that is H squared. Then I squared the second leg, that is 15 squared, and added them. And that is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. I have now used the Pythagoras theorem. Alright, can you tell me, what is 15 squared? What is 15 squared? 15 times 15. I gave you that number some time ago. Is 225. What is 25 squared? 25 squared is 625. So I have H squared plus 225 equal to 625. Now what we need to do is to solve for H. So tell me, what is the first thing to do in order to solve for H? First of all, move this positive 225 from the left to the right. It will come to the right, become minus 225. So H squared equal to 625 minus 225, and that is 400. So if H squared equal to 400, what is H equal to? Again, we take the square root of both sides. Square root of H squared equal to square root of 400, or H equal to square root of 400. Can you tell me what that value will be? What is square root of 400? What number raised to the power of 2 will give you 400? 20. 20 times 20 is 400. So H equal to square root of 400 equal to 20 meter. Alright, what I have done here is to give you an introduction on radical expressions. So now you understand the meaning of square root, cube root, and how to find the square root and cube root of certain numbers. Alright, you must practice some of this. In other words, you must know that 2 times 2 is 4, therefore square root of 4 is 2. 3 times 3 is 9, therefore square root of 9 is 3. Similarly, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, therefore cube root of 8 is 2. So all those principles you must know. Now we will use this now in the next lesson, and we will do simplification of radical expressions. Alright, so go and do your homework. Make sure that you understand all the basic principles of radical expressions. Okay, and I'll see you back for the next lesson, which is simplifying radical expressions in the next lesson. Understand the problem.